Sinise, Zakaise, Skaise, Cinemagit, Cinemanak, Gabulsu. I honor our men leaders. I honor our women leaders, our matriarchs of this community. But what pleases me even more so is I see so many of our youth here today. And I honor our children, because we need to live our lives in order that our children will have a place to follow, to go, because our lives affect so many people. One couple, whether they live in harmony or disharmony, after the third and fourth generation, it says in Exodus that the sins of a man will follow him to the third and fourth generation. One couple that has 4 children, and their children has 4 children, to the third and fourth generation, that one couple, after the fourth generation, will affect 680 lives. But then you look at it in our First Nations community, just society as a whole, multiple fathers, multiple marriages, half brothers, half sisters, and that's brought that number even to more. We can almost times that by 1,000, by 10. That our lives can affect so many people. And that's one thing we were trying to share within Rising Above, is how to deal with this. And what I'm going to share with you is heart issues. Because that's what we're dealing with. The things that are dealing right now, when the Rising Above band speaks, and as each one comes to speak to you today, and the days to come, it's going to be speaking to your heart, because that's where the issues are happening. I want to read to you a scripture. It's in Luke 10. It says, on the Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and the woman there has been crippled by the spirit for 18 years, and she was bent over and could not straighten up at all. That this woman was bent over, walking around for 18 years like this. And it says she was bent over from her afflictions. That she was bent over from things that happened in her life. And how many times, because we don't deal with our heart issues, that those things affect our lives. That many of us, me included, for 20 years, I was bent over in my life. I was bent over, walking around with this wound in my heart. Many wounds. And many of you here today are walking around bent over. But if you read the scripture more, you will see what Jesus does there. But with heart issues, can I get the next slide? With heart issues, as I speak into that we've been bent over, what we're trying to teach here today, throughout this whole week, is our life. The counseling model that we use within Rising Above speaks about we got to deal with our heart issues. We got to deal with the heart, and our life is like an iceberg. When you look at an iceberg, 1/3 of the iceberg, you can see it's above water. 2/3 of it is below water that you can't see. And so, when you look at an iceberg, even the Titanic, the people that owned the Titanic said, that's the ship that's unsinkable. And they even said, even God couldn't sink it. What happened to it? Where is the Titanic? They're sitting in the bottom of the ocean now. And what did they do? They hit an iceberg because they didn't see what was below the water. And many of us live our lives shipwrecked because we haven't looked at the below the water level. And this week, we want to bring you below the water level and start dealing with the heart issues. When we start looking at the presenting problem, things that's above water, we see the alcohol, we see the drugs, we see the promiscuous lifestyle. We see all this pain above water And many of the programs that are out there are dealing just with the surface issues. And sadly, many churches are only dealing with the surface issues, dealing with the drugs, dealing with the alcohol, dealing with the promiscuous lifestyle, this whole program of safe sex, handing out free condoms, and just dealing with surface issues. But we want to go down below the water level and start speaking into what happens to someone that has been sexually abused. What happens to those that have gone through residential school experience? Looking at the behavior, educating you on the behavior side of it, because the behavior comes from the goals that we create in our lives. And the goals that we have comes from the belief system that we have, the lies and vows that we've created to protect ourselves. And those lies and vows come from the image that we've created, the false image of who we are. And where did that false image come from? From the rage and the fear that is in our lives. And that rage and fear comes from, as you're going to hear throughout the week, and what Linda was sharing, comes from unresolved anger. And that unresolved anger turns to rage. And unresolved anger can also lead to depression. And as we look at the rage and fear, it comes from the confusion in our lives. And that confusion comes from the disappointment. And where did that disappointment come from? And that's where we want to take you, is the deep longings that haven't been met in your life. The deep longings that are built inside of us, deep inside, as we were created. In Scripture, it talks about, in Matthew, talks about when Jesus was baptized. It says when he was immersed in the water and he came out of the water, and it said the clouds opened up, thunder and lightning came, and a dove ascended down over Jesus. And then this loud voice said, "This is my beloved Son, whom I love, and I'm well pleased." That's the deep longings that are built in all of us, that's inside of us, that we all want to be loved. We all want to belong. And we all want to be affirmed. We all want to have that pat in the back. Way to go. Way to go, Daren. And when those deep longings aren't met, that's where the disappointment comes in, and the confusion, and the rage. Because in my life, I was raised in a Catholic home. My grandparents were strong Catholic, but there was something different about my grandparents. They loved the Lord, and they read Scripture, and my grandmother, we always went up to my grandmother's place to just hear these stories. She had this picture book Bible, and in that Bible, she would just tell us every story in Scripture. And to this day, when I read Scripture, it's almost word for word, but she would tell it to us like a storybook. And we always went up there, and we always went to my grandmother's place, but there was a reason why I went to my grandmother's place. Because at home, there was pain.